You've heard me say it before. Divorce is a marathon, not a sprint. It takes time, it takes energy, and it takes a lot out of you. Today, in our season 9 finale, we're going to go back through the 3 phases of divorce. We're going to talk about why it makes you feel crazy and how to know when you're really ready to move on. Let's get started. Welcome to the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional journey that is divorce. I'm your host, Erica, and if you're trying to figure out life after the big D, welcome to the club. Whether you're contemplating divorce or dealing with the aftermath or any of the many phases in between, the club has got you covered. Each week, you'll hear stories from women who have been in your shoes. This isn't about spilling tea on divorce details. This is about giving you the tools to take control of your own healing journey. Listen in weekly for advice, tips, and tools to help you move through each stage of the process. You've heard me say it before. Divorce is a marathon, not a sprint. And it's really hard to run when you're showing up, when you're already exhausted. Today, in our season finale, we are going to talk about the 3 phases of divorce, why it makes us all feel crazy, and how you can decide if you're ready to stay or go. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I'm your host, Erica, and today I thought it would be really fun to go back and talk through the 3 phases of divorce, and most importantly, to talk about why it makes us all feel crazy. I was just having a chat this morning with one of the listeners, and she was talking about how triggered she gets when her ex calls her crazy. And I think it's something we can all relate to. I know that in my life, I hate being called crazy in the bad way. I hate when my emotions get the best of me, when it triggers some sort of action, whether I'm yelling, whether I'm crying, whether I'm really frustrated. I used to have the worst experience every time I would get really upset or caught off guard. I'd have like a head to toe body flush where you turn red. So I'd be like in a corporate meeting and somebody would say something and my face would give me away. And it happens to all of us. We're not crazy. We're human. We're having a human experience. We're being emotional. And today I want to talk about those 3 phases. I want to talk about why we feel so crazy and what you can do about it. And then let's talk a little bit about when do you know? When do you know that it's time to move on? In fact, I think today, 9, 10, 111. Look at that. Little magic numbers. 111. This should be our 111th episode. But before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to this week's sponsor. Our episode is sponsored by The Club. The Club is our private divorce community. It is your space to be able to figure out who you are now that you've moved through this process. You get to build amazing friendships with other women who have gone through it or are going through it and get where you're coming from, all while figuring out who you want to be, what's next in your life, and what do you want to call in. If you're interested in learning more, visit thecrazyexwivesclub.com/the club. I can't wait to see you in there. All right, let's talk about these 3 phases of divorce. I was messaging with one of the listeners this weekend, and she had shared, too, if you've ever done any of the quizzes or you've seen any of the content, I always recommend that you guys start at season 1, episode 1. And I know that's not always realistic, but I hope that you do it because when I launched the podcast 2 years ago, I wrote the first 3 seasons to guide you through the process of figuring out who you are, of repairing and caring for your energy, and then learning how to thrive in your new normal. So they were built deliberately to help guide you through exactly what you're going through. So this listener had written in and she shared, I've been listening from episode 1 and cried many times since then. I only have one other divorced friend, and most of the advice that I receive is just leave him. It's incredibly frustrating. How many of you have not gotten the support, the advice, what you need from the people in your life? And it's not because they don't care. In fact, they do care, but they also have their own stories and their own shit that they're working through, and they can't always be there to support you. And so the goal of the podcast was to empower you to be able to navigate the 3 phases of divorce. The irony is that when you're in it, you do not realize that there are these 3 phases. And once you get through to the other side, you're like, oh, yeah. So phase 1. Phase 1 is the do I stay or do I go phase. This is the phase where you're still married, but you are unhappy. You spend a lot of time questioning, is this what it's supposed to be like? Was marriage supposed to be something more? Had we fight a lot, but then, it just kind of becomes normal. This is how it's working. You're not happy, but you're also a little bit concerned and uncertain about what's coming on the other side. So phase 1 is where we spend the majority of our time. And why do we spend so much time there? Because none of us got married to get divorced. None of us got married to be like, doesn't work for me anymore. I'm walking away. None of us did that. But I can guarantee that probably 99% of us fought for our marriage for a lot of years, fought to stay in it, fought to be heard, fought to be seen, fought to try and create change, to create something better so that everybody could be happy and feel loved. The majority of the women that I work with have one thing in common, and it is that they lost themselves in an effort to save the marriage. They lost who they were or what they wanted. They probably weren't showing up to be the wife that they had hoped, or even the mother that they had hoped. They are exhausted. They're not sleeping very well. Their health is definitely affected. I don't know about you, but I was full of inflammation. I was always really cranky. I was always really irritated. Fire. I'm a fire nature, so I'm real feisty. When I get out of balance, I wasn't sleeping very well. I wasn't really working out. I found that a little bit after. That was a big peace of mind piece. But I wasn't working out because I didn't have time. I had a kid at home. I had a marriage that was driving me nuts. I had a partner that I was always fighting with. I had a job that I was trying to figure out. I did not have any more capacity to take on more than what was already on my plate. And it was drowning in the emotions and the frustration and the uncertainty. We tried couples therapy. I tried individual therapy. Therapy was not his thing. I would find a book. I would find an article. I would find a YouTube video. I was desperate to find anything to try and talk to my then husband about the problems in our marriage. And I don't know about you, but I am an anxiously attached person. He was an avoidant attached person. So when troubles popped up, which, spoiler, there are always troubles in a relationship. Even when the relationship looks perfect on the outside, there are always challenges. You have 2 different people with 2 different sets of expectations and needs. But I digress. When you have that avoidant person and that anxiously attached, the more uncertain I became, the more anxious, the more connection I needed. The more he felt pursued, the more space he needed, which only aggravated my attachment style, needing more, which aggravated his. There's a lot to unwind when we hit this first phase. It didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to get fixed overnight. But it is definitely the place where we all stay. And it's the number one thing that I hear women say, I wish I hadn't stayed as long. I wish I would have been ready sooner. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, yep, that is definitely me. I am in the stay or go. You are unhappily married. You're not really sure. You're worried about what would happen if you file for divorce. You're not sure that you're ready to call it quits, but you also know you can't keep doing this. It is the number one space that people say, I just wish I could have gotten through it faster. Here's the thing. Everybody makes the best choice they can in the moment. If you were ready to move on faster, you would have. If you were ready to interpret something or say something differently, you would have. The first step is being aware. And when you're aware, then you can start to look at, do I want to do something differently? So don't beat yourself up. Don't. I beat myself up for so many years for how long I stayed. One thing I have never talked about before is when we did finally separate, we were in the middle of therapy. It was actually the second therapist we had found. We had tried a therapist prior. She had sent us out with, you got to do this or try this, or a lot of activities to try and heal the resentment. that had been built up, or the feelings of not being seen that had built up. And I was done. I was done. My then husband really didn't want to participate. I really didn't love him anymore. I was hurt and I was angry and I was resentful. And in that moment, I decided that I wanted to do the work to fall back in love. I decided that I was not ready to call it quits on the marriage. And so I did the work. I started to look for the things that he did that I appreciate. I started to look for all the ways that I used to love him, and could I love him again? And then spent time every single day being grateful for him exactly as he was, until I did fall back in love with him, only to land in the spot of learning that he had checked out a long time prior. So there's no shame in how long you stay in this. We all want to know that we've done everything we could before we decided that divorce is the option. And part of my do I stay or do I go journey was a 2-year separation. Now, some states require you to have a 1-year separation before you can actually file the divorce, or a 1-year, processing time before you can file the divorce. I don't think that's a bad thing if it's used appropriately. Are you using the time to reflect on who you are and what you want? Being able to sit in this phase and say, hey, I'm not who I want to be in partnership. I'm not acting like it. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like I'm getting the love that I want, and I am not able to give the love that I want to give. So then sit down and ask yourself, what do you want? What does it feel like to be in the right relationship? How do you show up in the right relationship? What does your day in and day out look like? What does a Saturday morning cup of coffee look like in the ideal relationship? What does your kid's birthday look like in the ideal relationship? Get really clear on who you want to be in a relationship, and then ask yourself if your current partner wants the same things. Are you aligned on the same values? Are you aligned on the same vision? Sometimes we get to this phase and we can catch it early enough to fix it and do the work to rebuild it. And if we catch it too late, then we do the work to be able to move on. So phase two, you have decided divorce is the option. You have started the process. You are now learning who you are without the title of wife, without the years of responsibility, or without all of the times that you set your own needs aside because it was for the greater good. It was for the marriage. It was for the family. It was for the kids. All of the self-sacrificing that, oh my God, are us women good at. We sacrifice until we lose ourselves. And then guess what? I myself am guilty. Then I blame my partner because he must have done something, right? I blamed my then husband. He must have done something to cause me to be this unhappy. The reality is I stopped protecting my own self-care boundaries. I stopped fighting for what I needed. And when I decided divorce was the answer, then I was responsible for rebuilding who I wanted to be. I mean, I remember when I filed for divorce, and when the divorce was final, I sat in a space and I said, I don't even know what I like or don't like. I don't know where I end and where that marriage begins. Do I like what I'm eating for dinner, or was I just eating that because that's what he was making? Right? What do I want? What do I crave? What do I desire in my life? And how am I consciously taking steps and actions to build that? One of my favorite self-explorations, which is totally a topic for another episode, was about reclaiming my daily pleasure practice. So a pleasure practice, when we hear the word pleasure, when we hear the word desire, we think sex. Desire and pleasure for a woman are not just sex. In fact, probably a really small part. Isn't that always the problem in relationships? That he's really physical touch, sex focused, and she really is intimacy and connection focused. Okay, well, guess what? Your pleasure practice, your desire practice starts long before any sort of sexual interaction. And so I read the book Pussy, A Reclamation by Regina. I cannot think of her last name, but I'll put the link in the show notes for you. And while that book is a lot about reclaiming your sexual power, it starts with a very simple daily desire practice. And when you hit phase 2, when you've decided divorce is the option, and all of a sudden you have a wee bit of more free time. I know it hurts when your kids go to the other house, but you also now have alone time to figure out who the hell are you and who do you want to be? What do you want to have for breakfast? What do you want to make for dinner? What do you want in your bedroom or in your living room? Or what car do you want to drive? These questions, these desires no longer have to be negotiated between two people. It's just up to you. And so that book was super amazing because it tells her story and it gives you a bunch of practices to do in it. But something as simple as this concept that everything in your day should bring you desire. The lotion that you wear, do you like the aroma? Do you like how it feels on your skin? How are you putting your skincare on? How are you putting your makeup on? Do you enjoy the time you spend in the shower? Is your morning cup of coffee something you just have to get through, or is it something that you desire and look forward to the night before? This phase 2 can be an incredibly exciting time and equally as overwhelming because that safety net of somebody else to ask, hey, should I do A or should I do B? Should I book this trip or that trip? Should I buy this or buy that? That person's no longer there. You now are standing in your own independence and you're getting to make all of these decisions. So when you hit phase 2, just really remind yourself of the beauty and excitement that can be of figuring out who you are. When I hit this phase, I committed to retrying everything I had ever said no to because I didn't know if I had said no because I didn't like it or if there was some underlying uncertainty, fear trapped underneath it. Did I really not like camping? Or was I just worried about hair, makeup, shower, bathrooms, logistics of having to pee in the middle of the night when you don't really like being out in the dark? Yep, that would be me. Did I really not like camping or was it those issues? Did I really not like breweries, trying new beer, or was it because prior it had really not agreed with my system? What was it? I decided to explore the city I had lived in for, I think at that point we'd almost been there 10 years. I had been there, but never really given it a fair shot. And so this became that pass to say, okay, let's go try everything again. From this space of zero pressure, zero expectation, I can love it or I can leave it. It doesn't matter because it's only up to me. And I retried all of those things. And I figured out that there were certain types of beers that I liked better than other. But overall, I'm a whiskey gal. That was actually something that came up from the separation too. I must have matured or bittered enough, got angry enough. I don't know. But yeah, whiskey over beer all the time. I went camping and I realized that I actually liked it so much so that I solo camped through Colorado. Okay. Things I would have never done before. Explored different countries solo, things I would have never done before. I showed up and allowed, that inner guidance of desire to lead me like, what do I feel like having for dinner tonight while I'm on this international trip in Taiwan? Or when I was in London, right? Like, what do I feel? Which feels good? What way do I want to lean? And I had all the ability to make those choices. And yes, I still primarily had my son. My son went to his dad's house 2 days a week. And those 2 days were me time. Those 2 days were time for me to really decide what I wanted. I no longer lived in I must do this. I have to do this. It's socially accepted to do this. I mean, officially, you already broke the what's socially accepted. Even though 50% of marriages end in divorce, why is it still such the black mark on your record? It is. So now do whatever you want to do. I decided I no longer had to show up to family events unless I really wanted to. Primarily, it was because if I knew an event, whether that was friends or family, was going to leave me exhausted, I didn't have the luxury of a partner to lean on until I got my energy back, which meant that I became insanely protective over my energy stores, over how much sleep I got, over working out and staying fit so that I had enough energy over what I fueled myself with. They were non-negotiables because I didn't get to have a hangover day. I didn't get to have somebody else that got to make dinner. I had to do it on my own, which meant that I said no. I didn't volunteer at my kid's school. I got a lot of looks. I finally volunteered when he hit 5th grade because I was now at a stable enough place where I had energy to give. I had flexible work schedule. I could show up as often as they needed me, and then I gave. But prior to that, all of those social expectations, I just said no. If it didn't fill my heart with joy, if I did not desire doing it, I didn't go do it. So phase 2 is a beautiful time of finding yourself. I will say this. I'm not a big proponent of dating in phase 2. I think there's times for it, but I think that there is a beauty in figuring out who you are and who you want to be in your next chapter without all of the hormones and attraction and flirty things and pressure to find the right person. And because a relationship is another co-creating, it's another falling into expectations of what does it mean to be in a relationship and who do you need to be. And while, yes, that creates some challenges in its own. If you like to travel and you don't have a travel partner, what are you going to do? Find a friend, a family member, or find a group that organizes trips and go on your own. It definitely creates some shifts, but I think that time, the self-exploration time, is so crucial to be able to find yourself again. If you ever land in another relationship and start getting lost. And the time that we spend in phase 2, figuring out who we are, figuring out how to come home to ourself again, is that reassurance. It is our guarantee that we'll never get lost again, that we'll never lose ourselves for the sake of a relationship because we know how to get ourselves back. Now, here's the little asterisk that I will put here. Sometimes when we get in this phase, sometimes when we shut down to relationships, what we're really doing is protecting our hearts so we never get hurt again. And so it can be very tempting to lock yourself down in phase 2, to be unavailable to connection because it is easier. It is easier to build a very happy, single, solo life of just you and your kids. And there's no right or wrong. That is a very, very valid path for a lot of people. The thing that only you can answer is, are you shutting down to protect your heart from ever taking a risk and getting hurt again? Or is it the thing that you really want? If you're feeling overwhelmed, exhausted from overthinking, and stuck in uncertainty, this message is for you. You don't have to keep feeling that way. Inside the club, you'll find a safe space to rediscover who you are, clarify what you want, and determine how you want to move forward. Surrounded by women who truly understand and guided by expert support, you are not alone on this journey. Join us at thecrazyexwivesclub.com/the club. It's time to reclaim your life. And then we move into phase 3. Phase 3 is learning how to thrive in your new normal, because guess what? After divorce, your normal is very different than all of your friends that are married, all of your single friends, and all of your family. There is nothing that changes up all of the systems, the habits, the patterns that you have in your life quite like divorce. You lose extended family, your holidays change, you might have to sell the house, you might move to a new neighborhood. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why, but there is a thing about couples not wanting the divorced woman to hang out with them anymore. On both sides, it is a thing. And every divorced woman I've talked to has shared that the couple friends all fell away. While they still really liked the person, there just isn't room for a single person versus a couple dynamic. All of those things change. You don't have the support system. You don't have somebody to text when the plane loads up and you're on a business trip and you want to let them know that you're taking off. It asks you to figure out a new way to do life when it comes to co-parenting. That's a big way you got to thrive in a new normal, because this person who you used to be in love with, who you used to have a very intimate connection with, has now become a business partnership that you collaborate and partner with in the effort to raise your kids. Dating looks a hell of a lot different when you're post-divorce. What does dating look like with kids, right? I've got people that, right or wrong, it is up to you. My standpoint on dating after divorce was that my child was not meeting any of the people I were dating until I knew that they were going to stay, which means my child only met one person while I was dating them. It was important to me that my son didn't have a revolving door of other people. It was important to me that I met this partner and knew that we were compatible before adding a kid in there. It adds a lot more, but I think to me it was really important to protect my son's heart. I knew that family was important to my kiddo. I knew that he desired to have a cohesive family again someday, but that's also why I never wanted to rush. And that was a really hard choice, you guys. I can't tell you how many times I wanted to break that rule that I had set for myself. But I had set that rule prior to starting dating. I had set that rule when I was very clear and grounded in who I was, so that when it became tempting to invite somebody over to the house, or when it became tempting to just be like, oh my God, it'd be so easier. I have my kiddo this weekend and I just would really like to have an adult to talk to. I knew what my boundaries were, and then I could stick to them. No right or wrong. I see people do it the other way. I think the only thing that my heart asks is, and especially with older kids, right? Because the older kids understand that everyone you date is not necessarily the person forever. But what sort of impact does it have on them when they see somebody comes for 6 months or 2 years or 3 years, however long, and then leaves? And so these are the things of thriving in your new normal that you need to sit down and decide before you open the door to dating. What's going to be important to you to know about this person before they meet your kids? When do you want them to meet your kids? How do you want them to meet your kids? How do you want to talk about it before? Do you talk about how they parent in a situation and how you parent in a situation? Dating, let's see, what else? I mean, you have a lot less time. I see a lot of women in this phase, this thriving in new normal, because all of a sudden you've gotten through the worst of the heartache. You've gotten through the crying, sobbing on the bathroom floor. You've gotten through the Friday nights where you feel so insanely alone and you just wish the pain would end. You've gotten through the holidays where you don't have your kids and you think that you are just going to break. And now you have a lot of time. And so you start working out. You start becoming more active. You build new social circles with new interests. And sometimes it's hard to find new interests. It is not easy as a mid 30s, mid 40s, mid 50s woman trying to find new social circles. Go try. I mean, I took quilting classes. I took cake decorating classes. Sports were not my thing, so I avoided a lot of those co-ed sports leagues. I did a lot of travel. Anything, say yes to and go try it once. But learning to thrive in your new normal is a lot about you deciding, who do you want to be? What's important? What do those boundaries look like? And then holding yourself accountable to them. I mean, the cool part is you get to write whatever you want. I decided I did not want to manage a whole house anymore. And I downsized from a house that I had to manage the yard and the snow removal and all the jazz into a townhouse that was half the size. So was it snug? Sure. But somebody else mowed the yard. And when there was a snake in my kitchen, somebody else came to get it. And somebody else always took care of the snow removal. And so there was a lot less that I had to manage. And that was a strategic choice that I made in my thriving in my new normal. I wanted my time to be spent on figuring out who I wanted to be in this next chapter, not spent maintaining a house. These are all areas that you get to look at and you get to explore and venture through as you're in this new phase. So the 3 phases: deciding to stay or go. Who are you now that you've decided divorce is the option? And 3, how do you thrive in your new normal? I would say this. I would say if you're out there and you're like, hey, okay, I am definitely in the to phase. So I've decided divorce is the right option, whether you're separated or already processed, but that is what you're moving forward. You are moving forward. So you want to figure out how to get through the triggers. You want to figure out how to get through the emotions. You want to figure out how to no longer be upset or be regretful or wondering if you made the right decision. That is the ideal member for the club. That is the stuff that we're dealing with every single week. That is the questions, the calls, the coaching, the support that we're offering is helping you stay focused on your end goal in mind. Where do you want to go? And we're going to hold you up and get you through it. Now, if you're not sure what phase you're in, there is a free quiz on the crazyexwivesclub.com. It's called Finding Your Way Forward. You can find it on social media too. It's under, I think the highlight is called quiz or freebies, but there's a quiz. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to make you laugh a little bit, but it will tell you which phase of divorce you're in. And then when you enter in your email, it will send you a tip sheet. It gives you one thing you can do for each phase of the process to help you get unstuck, to be able to know how to move forward. So if you're debating, do I stay or do I go? It'll give you a self-care practice, a reflecting practice for you to get clear and get the clarity you want. If you are deciding who you are, it will give you an activity to start to define what those values are. And if you're learning how to thrive in your new normal, there is a technique in there to help you be able to move forward. So again, you can find the quiz on the crazyexwivesclub.com. You can also learn more about the club on there. The quiz is under freebies. The club is under services. The other thing I wanted to talk about on today's episode is, why the heck does divorce make us feel so crazy? I mean, I just laid out those 3 steps. They seem very understandable, right? You're like, oh, yes, Erica, that makes perfect sense. First, I decide what I want. Then I figure out who I am. Then I learn how to thrive in the new conditions. No problem. So why do we get stuck? Why does divorce kick our ass? Why does it continue to knock us down, sometimes years after the paperwork is final? Well, feeling crazy in divorce is not at all about your sanity. It is about your emotions. And divorce creates this perfect storm of the emotional, mental, and physical stressors maxed out, all 3 hitting at once. And that's where, when we look at the name, The Crazy Ex-Wives Club, I wanted to name it this because, we are all crazy at times when our emotions have the best of us. When our emotions are triggered and hurting and screaming for attention, that's when we feel crazy. That's when we do things that maybe we wouldn't do if we were in a little bit of a different state. And so the point of this podcast was to empower you to heal the places that broke in your marriage, to find yourself again for those of you who lost yourself for the sake of saving the marriage. We are crazy as women in a good way. We're crazy because we look at things with a lens of love and abundance, and we give so much of ourselves, right? We're multipliers. What we are given, we multiply. And so we want to make sure that we're crazy in the good way. We're crazy in the way that we can do divorce differently. We can do it in a way where we can be respectful, where we can extend grace, where we can protect ourselves, our own feelings, our own boundaries, and get what we need so that our kids know that divorce does not have to be a thing that ruins everyone. Divorce doesn't have to be this ugly word. Now, hopefully you found the podcast before it got too late. Maybe it was able to help you save your marriage. But if not, how can we move forward and stop creating more pain? We've got to get to a place where we stop multiplying the painful experiences and we transform that pain into purpose. We transmute that into something that helps us move forward. I can tell you that right now, post-divorce, I am far more understanding of people going through a difficult phase. I'm far more patient with people, and I am able to extend so much more grace for how individuals interact. And I would have never gotten to this point unless I had been put through the catalyst that is divorce. So let's talk a little bit about why it feels so crazy, though, because there are some key things that are happening. So that emotional, mental, physical stressors all getting triggered at once. It creates some very specific dynamics in the body and in the mind. And when we can't rely on one, right, the systems that you relied on for clarity and for strength are all getting triggered at once. All the warning bells are going off. So you don't know what's real and what's not real. Your nervous system, while it starts in, a little bit of fight or flight and then it calms back down, fight or flight, calms back down, eventually your nervous system starts firing like it's under constant threat. It thinks that it is in a live or die situation because the way your life has been running is under attack. There's a good chance that all of that is going to change. And what comes through on the other side is a rebirth of something else. But before we get to that rebirth, there's a whole lot of fear that our nervous system starts to heighten and jack up. So, okay, one of the things that used to happen all the time, and I would be like, what the fuck is going on? Emotional whiplash. 1 minute, you feel good. You're clear. You know the answer is to move forward. The next, you're sobbing in your car. I'd be driving down the road, a good song would come on, I'd be jamming out, I'd be like, everything is going to be okay. I don't know if it's this or something else, but I know that I am okay. I know that my son's going to be okay. We are good. Then I'm bawling. And I could not figure out how I could go from feeling that amazing to that terrible so quickly. Well, it's because the emotions, the things like grief and anger, fear, even the moments of relief, they come in waves and often without warning. So you're riding this wave of feeling fantastic. I visualize surfing. You're literally riding the wave, tiptoe forward, tiptoe back, tiptoe forward, tiptoe back. And if we don't manage it, we tumble over and the wave gets the best of us. So that emotional whiplash is because sometimes all the good feelings flood out and then all the grief and the anger floods out. And your brain is having to process a lot of loss. Okay. Loss of the life that you thought you'd have, loss of the family structure, loss of the in-laws, loss of the person. It's so much more than just the one person you're divorcing. And so your brain is going through all of those things at once. Now, the second thing that happens, or second thing that causes us to feel a little bit crazy, we talked about in phase 2, it's an identity collapse. So marriage often becomes how we define ourselves, right? Here's the wife that I am. Whether or not you work, my ex worked. So I was still the wife of the, manager of in his role. And then I was still who I was as a working wife and mom in my career. But we define ourselves by that relationship, right? The wife, the partner, part of a family unit. And divorce rips that anchor away. It rips that story we've been telling about ourselves, and it makes you question, who are you now? So without somebody who chose you to marry you, without a partner that you come home to every night, without a family unit intact, who are you now? And without that anchor, without that set of stability of the way you've built your life for X number of years, even small decisions can feel very overwhelming. Because again, support system has been removed, nervous system goes haywire. All right, then we get into some of the negative parts. Gaslighting and self-doubt happens. It comes up. A lot of times what starts to happen is our mind starts to revisit past conversations, past experiences, and starts to question, well, is that really the way it was? Did I misinterpret it? Did I see that wrong? Did he say it wrong? Did he see it wrong? This is heightened exponentially because I think that it's probably pretty rare at the end of a marriage when two people are hurt, two people are triggered, to not find that there's some sort of manipulation or emotional control that's happening. So even outside of any of the extreme cases of manipulation and emotional abuse, I think that when two people are fighting and two people are fighting for their own happiness, they do pull some of the levers to trigger people in certain ways. You might have been told your feelings were wrong or exaggerated. I remember one of the things that really used to bother me is, something would happen, whether it was a conversation or a fight, and I would be overcome with emotions and I'd be crying. And he would say something to the effects of like, "Oh my God, are you crying again? Like, what is your problem?" Okay, well, I wasn't crying. I wasn't waterworks for show. I was hurt. I was upset. And so being told that my feelings were wrong or exaggerated, or being told that I'm crazy, I'm acting crazy, what's wrong with you? That creates a lot of self-doubt in ourselves, and it has us question who we are and how we're acting. Your emotions are valid. They are always valid. Now, how you choose to express them might not be helpful and might not be okay, but the feelings that are in there are valid. If you're mad, that's a valid feeling. We need to explore that. If you're feeling unloved, that's a valid feeling. Let's look at it. This is the power of truly doing the work. Like, I love nothing more than to help somebody really look at their emotions, stare it down, rip it out, get rid of the ones that no longer serve you, because they're there until we take a look at them. So the gaslighting, the self-doubt, high stakes conflict. You probably lived in high stakes conflict for a long time. And then as you move through the divorce, there probably was some increase in the high stakes conflict, because now you are, unfortunately, a lot of people are fighting at this point, whether or not both parties are aligned in the divorce decision. But you start to second guess things. You start to replay conversations. Did I understand it? Did I get what it was right? Am I overreacting? Am I not overreacting? It just gets all messy. It gets all messy in your mind. Then we have overload, cognitive overload. So your brain has been firing on adrenaline. It's been working on fear. It's been running 24/7. You're probably having a hard time sleeping. You probably are not getting the reset and the rest that you need. I mean, think about it. Legal timelines, financial decisions, co-parenting logistics, sell the house or keep the house. How am I going to pay for this? Do I need to get a new job? It is like a second full-time job, and it's running all the time in your mind. It's a lot to handle at once. So your brain is on overload, and it eventually is going to run out. It's like that old saying, right? You can't burn a candle at both ends. Yeah, that's what's happening. You're trying to burn the candle at both ends because you got a daily life you have to keep up on, but then you have this whole divorce thing that's wreaking havoc on the rest of your life, disrupts your memory, it disrupts your focus, your thinking, your clear thinking. I could not watch TV, let alone read a book. It's why I napped so often, because I could not stop the anxiety and the fear-based thoughts. And so I'd be like, okay, great, well, I'll watch a movie. I could not even focus on the movie. All of a sudden, movie's on and I'm watching it, but then my mind was off somewhere else, and I was down the trail of following whatever worry, thoughts, anxiety it was creating. I'd read the same sentence over and over again in a book, and I'd be like, okay, this is just not working. Sleep loss, I woke up at the same time almost every single night. And once I woke up, it was really hard to fall back asleep. Those are all signs of cognitive overload. You are living on too high of a stress load. And so then it's making everything feel exponentially bigger. A loss of control. I really like to control details. I still kind of like to control details, but I'm getting better at it. You can't control the court system. You can't control the time it takes to get through the divorce. Oh, the biggest one that I hear about all the time, you cannot control your ex's behavior. And the one that hurts the most, you cannot control how others perceive you. I know there were so many times I wanted to write that social post. I wanted to make that comment, to speak my truth, but it was coming from a place of needing validation. It was coming from a place of trying to prove that I was right, to prove my worth. And I realized that didn't really matter. If somebody was going to think poorly of me, then that was their problem. And what was most important, again, setting those visions or those values prior, I knew that I did not want to be the one that was responsible for ruining how my child saw either of the relationship with me or with his dad. I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to be the one that talked shit. I wasn't going to be the one that had to get the validation or had to prove they were right. I did eventually make a post, but it came from a place of knowing my transformation and my worth. It didn't come from a place of me trying to say what he did or why I was, the saint for all the things that I had put up with or all the things I was willing to forgive him for. It was about me. And it was about like, I know who I am and what I stand for and how intensely I love and accept people. And if they could not love and accept me, then they no longer had a seat at my table. So it can feel very powerless, that especially when the courts are not backing you up. It can feel insanely aggravating when there is something that you see is so very clear and so very true and valid, and you're not getting the response you need. And a lot of that is teaching us a lesson of how to let go of control. What can we control? What can we influence? And there's a lot of things that are no longer in your control once divorce becomes the answer. And then the last one I want to touch on is isolation. So I'm trying to think if I have any of my same friends, maybe one or two, but most of the friend groups split. They either went with him or they went with me, since most of the friends we had came through sports or work connections that he had. He was still very much into going out and drinking, and I wasn't. And so any of the friends that were more along the partying side of what we used to do, they went with him, and I was rebuilding. Luckily, my family didn't take sides. I do hear about that all the time, and that breaks my heart even more. If your family is not being supportive of your decision, that is insanely hard. Insanely hard. And no, that has nothing to do with you. That is about their own emotions. Again, our family shows up, our friends show up, they do their best, but they've got their own stories, they've got their own traumas, they've got their own triggers, and they've got their own grief that they're trying to work through because they had a story about how your life was going to go, and now you've just changed it. So all of that can leave you feeling very isolated. I know sometimes I would even reach out to people and then we'd talk, and at the end of the conversation, I just didn't feel like I got what I needed. I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel like they understood what I was going for. And sometimes that actually made me feel even more isolated. So even when friends were like, oh my gosh, come out with us, and you'd go out and you'd hang out, or I had an amazing coworker who always invited me over with her family for the holidays if I didn't have my son. And so it was amazing, right? They're just very warm, friendly, loving people. And I felt fantastic while I was there. But then when I went home, I felt even more alone because the rituals weren't quite the same, or I went home to an empty house, or it just again brought me face to face with the fact that wasn't my reality anymore. It can feel incredibly lonely, but the one thing every divorced woman I've ever talked to has said is that I felt so alone. So we all feel alone. We all feel like we don't have what we're looking for. And the beauty is that right now there are so many spaces for you to meet other women. In fact, if you're not ready for the club, there is a free Facebook group that I started. You can pop in there. You can ask your questions. You can share your concerns. It's just a free private space for you to be able to speak openly with other people who get it, not with your friends or your family who also have their own perception that they are trying to work through. So when you look at all of these things, right, loss of control, isolation, cognitive overload, the self-doubt, the gaslighting, if there was any sort of emotional abuse, identity collapse, and that favorite one, the emotional whiplash, this is why we feel so crazy when we're going through divorce. You are in a marathon of prolonged emotional and physical stress. It is taking a toll on your mind and on your body. And one tiny step forward at a time, you will make it through. Now, depending on how quickly, that surfboard example, how quickly are you leaning in to the curiosity, to the positive emotions, to this isn't what I wanted, but I believe that something good can come of it. That's going to help you navigate through the process faster than staying in the victim side, than staying in the he did this to me, than staying in the I don't want this. And I've been on both sides. And I will tell you that if you're in that negative side of being so resentful and frustrated that he did this, right? He caused this, and this is nothing that you asked for. I never asked for this. I didn't want this. I fought against this. One day you are going to decide that you're done. You're done being mad. You're done being sad. For a while, it just feels good. It feels good to sit in the feels. And then one day you're just over it. And that's the point that now you can start really rebuilding. You are always on your path. You are always creating the life that you are meant to live in, and there are no wrong choices. Sometimes it feels like we are very far off our path. I felt like I was very much off my path for about 5 years. And the really fun part is now sitting in this space, being able to reflect back. I was never off my path. It felt very dark for a while. It felt like I really didn't understand where I was going or what was coming next. But that is the beauty of reflection, right? We can sit back and we can say, it all makes sense. And if you are ever doubting if you are going to get through it, just go to the podcast, pull up any of the stories from the Other Side episodes where you can listen to real women who got through, real women who say, hey, this is not what I had planned for my life. And it was hard, but I did it. And I am telling you that there is life on the other side. I am telling you that you too will be able to make it through. So as we celebrate this 100th and 11th episode, the season 9 season finale, I want you to give yourself some extra grace. I know it's hard. I know that it's not always fun. And I know that it can feel really shitty to hear the people who have gotten through and you're still in it. And so I want you to know that I see you and that my DMs are always open. I love hearing from you. I love getting messages, letting me know if there's a topic you want to have me talk about, or even just that you're there and you're listening on the other side. You guys, the 3 phases, you will get through them all. You will not always feel as crazy as you do during divorce. And until you're ready to walk that path on your own, the Crazy Ex-Wives Club is here for you. And that's it. Another great episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast for women learning how to heal from their divorce. Tune in next week for more advice and tips to help you figure out life after divorce. And until then, give yourself grace, do the best you can, and know that this is all part of the process.